Hey, David, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me, Carrie.
Yeah, no problem. I'm so excited that you're here chatting with us today. But first of all, what are your plans this weekend?
Oh, plans this weekend. I'm actually traveling to your neck of the woods.
Mhm.
As you know, a public speaker, coach, trainer,
Yeah.
and I get the right to be able to be in Charlotte, Winston-Salem, and Apex, North Carolina. So Sunday I fly out, and
Mhm.
then I'm in your neck of the woods all next week.
Very nice, very nice. And I'm actually going to Charleston, so I've got a race to do. I signed up for it months ago, so that'll be fun.
That is fun.
Yeah, it's down by the beach, so
That's cool.
yeah, it'll
Yeah,
be a good
never
time.
been. Yeah, I'm really excited to spend some time there in that neck of the woods, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, everyone, this is David Bernal. We think that David is the best business coach one can have, as well as best bold coach with Keller Williams. So we are so super excited that he would give us time and come on here and chat with us about how to build the best life you you can and what it takes, what you should look at, just all the things of how to have the biggest, best life and business and anything you can think of. So we, again, thank you because we know you're so busy.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Carrie. And listen, saying yes to this is easy because of who you and Chad are and how you guys show up and who you are in your communities. So, it's more often than not, I have to pivot and not agree to doing these things. And this was an easy yes. So thank you for having me.
Oh, we appreciate it so much. So I guess let's get started. Again, we think you're the best. And so I feel like these questions are going to be pretty easy for you to answer. And you have
Okay.
such an amazing life. Um, First of all, do you want to like talk a little bit about who you are, how you started in real estate, or how you got to be a coach?
Yeah, great question. So, it started, I had always wanted to own my own business. And
Mhm.
I remember sitting at Barnes and Noble at 15 and 16 years old, not
Mhm.
able to afford the books and turning the pages with a ruler so I didn't get in trouble for damaging the pages, and essentially treated Barnes and Noble like the library because they had the more updated stuff. And
Yeah.
so I always knew I wanted to own my own business. And I worked for Chevron for 10 plus years and decided, man, I want to get into real estate. And got into real estate and within a very short period of time had success.
Mhm.
And what I realized, as a matter of fact, I was just discussing this with someone last night, is it really wasn't my ability to do the things. As a matter of fact, you and Chad, as some of the other coaching clients that I have, actually realtor better than I did.
Mhm.
What I did exceptionally well, if I can say so, was I had a clear vision and my mindset was sort of unstoppable.
Yeah.
And I knew it wasn't if I was going to succeed, it was how long it was going to take. And I say that with all humility, right?
Mhm.
And so, built a business quickly, was
Mhm.
asked to teach an Ignite class in my market center. And I'm like, nah, I'm too busy. Right. And
Yeah.
that's, as you know, Carrie, just an
Yeah.
internal class to help folks with selling and interacting with clients and that kind of thing. And I thought, no, 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 no. And I did the first one. And I came back in my office and I was like, that was fun. I
Yeah.
like it. And I had at Chevron worked as a training manager and as a trainer. And it was the material, I didn't love it. And yet I did like helping people. I liked the ahas. I liked
Yeah.
getting people to see their potential. And as a matter of fact, the very first class I ever taught coming out of the Army was a combat lifesaver class, like first aid CPR class.
Yeah.
And so kind of tapped in, carried to my roots of teaching, training, coaching. And ultimately, what I realized was I wanted to be for people the person I didn't have. I
Mhm.
wanted to be for people the calling out the blind spots, whack over the head if they needed. The motivation at times is just really being, if I were a coach, like in a sports setting, and
Mhm.
you think of any great, like you had some interaction with Tom Brady, and I use Tom Brady a lot as an analogy. He
Yeah.
had a handful of coaches sort
Yeah.
of screaming at the sidelines to get him to be who he needed to be. So that's a very long answer to that's what led me to what I'm doing now. And I pinch myself that I get to do this every day because it's an honor to be partnered with people like you and Chad
Yeah.
to do what you guys do.
Well, we appreciate it so much. I mean, it helps us immensely. So I'm thank you again for like just giving everybody like a little overall like view of who you are. So but let's just hop into some questions. Maybe maybe they'll help other folks that, are in the same position Chad and I are in, and so many other realtors and or people in life trying to figure out what it would take, what do you need to do or focus on to have the best and biggest life or business that you want. One of the first questions I have for you is, how does time and money show up in your world?
That's a good question. It's interesting because oftentimes as business, the focus is profit.
Mhm.
And that's true. And that's what we track. And we track
Yeah,
profitability. And yet it's for the purchase of time
yeah,
in most cases, right? Not all cases. Certainly there's the pay down of debt or and yet ultimately, if you go for what,
yeah,
there's a time element there, right? Well, I want to save for retirement, time, right? I want to be able to go on vacation, time. I want
yeah.
to own a vacation home, time. So there's time. It's a fantastic question. So understanding that relationship between what's it all for
Hmm.
and what is the money, right? If you were like me when I started out in my 20s, it was I just need to pay the bills,
Yeah,
right? Then you get into the 30s and it's like, oh, I want to pay the bills and have a little fun.
yeah.
And when we get into business, it really should be a very big idea of what's the profit all for. So personally, as you know, we take like I just came off 15 weeks at the beach with
Yeah,
my family, and that is so massively important to me.
yeah, yeah. So, so how do you necessarily manage the time and money in your personal life? Because you said that you were at the beach for 15 weeks, but how does that align with your personal and professional goals?
Yeah. Well, it's we're either making profit or we're making time. And
Yeah,
so it's understanding where do we want our profitability to be in the business? And similarly, like what do we want the time to be?
yeah,
We very rarely track the latter. It's sort of like, I want to make $1 million this year and I'll figure it out. And it's like, well, if you work 365 days a year, what's that going to do for your relationships? What
yeah,
damage is done? So cool, you made the million. So I would say, tracking we track time as a family. Like I've got a whiteboard over here, and it's got Daddy, Mommy, Jackson, Harlow, Emma, right?
yeah,
So my three kids,
yeah.
and it's all time related. So we're tracking time as closely as we're tracking money.
Yeah. No, I can see that. I mean, you kind of have to. Otherwise, you lose yourself and you're not even sure what you're doing it for. You
Right.
just lose it. So I totally get that, and that definitely happens. How does someone get clarity on their priorities and values?
Well, the short answer, and this isn't a plug at me, Mike, as you know, roster is full,
Yeah,
and but it's hire a coach, hire someone that's going to be able to. I mean, I'm looking at 150 books probably in my bookshelf
yeah,
around purpose, why, discovering what that's for. And I would say, Carrie, when we look back when we're kids and you go to a 6-year-old and you ask them what they want to be, and they say
yeah,
things like astronaut and firefighter and princess, right? Or whatever.
yeah,
And we show up in that space very supportive, right?
yeah,
Oh, you could do it, and that's awesome, and that's cute, and whatever. Somewhere along the way, we become very cynical towards that dreamer. And then it becomes sort of like, okay, well, you're not going to be able to do that, or you're right. And then here comes this inner dialogue. And so I would say the one, carving out enough time to give yourself to think about what you enjoy doing. What did you
mhm,
enjoy doing as a child? Understanding your personality traits. Do you get your energy from people, not with people? When
mhm,
you're on vacation, what does your behavior typically show? That you're more adventurous, more reclusive, quiet, and then really understanding then how do I lean into that more in my 9 to 5, right? How do I lean into that more in the business setting so that we have fulfillment and purpose and drive and excitement in what it is that we're doing. So somewhere along the way, someone said work should feel like a grind. And I don't know
yeah,
who said that, but I'm gonna like beat him over the head. It shouldn't
yeah,
be.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, you kind of answered one of my other questions that kind of was like a follow-up question of that one, but what do you feel like the role of self-awareness plays in gaining clarity on one's priorities and values?
That's a fantastic question. Well, I think that in and of itself is the gauge then of how much purposeful time I have to set aside
Mhm.
to sort of know thyself, right? Because there's so
Yeah,
so many books on knowing one's self, knowing. So I would say that's tough. That's in the lack of self-awareness, you're really relying on others. And
Yeah.
so, then it's, do I trust the people around me to have very honest, direct conversations around where they see my purpose and right? And
Yeah.
so I would say you know, working on what's the questions you're asking yourself
Hmm.
about how you show up in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I think it takes a while too to do that. I mean, I think, gosh, it's such a process. You feel like you're figuring out one thing, and then all of a sudden I'm like, no, how do I figure that's just like a tip of an iceberg, and then you kind of dig further. That's what we found digging through all these questions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's exactly
really.
it. Most people don't have enough thinking time with themselves, which is where journaling comes in, right? And whether
Yeah.
your relationship with journaling is great or not,
Yeah.
the main crux of it is exactly what you just said, Carrie. It's slowing down to just give yourself some thinking time.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I definitely agree with you. How does happiness show up in your life?
Ooh, gosh, man, you got all the great questions. Well, first you have to define it. I mean, you have to, define that. It's funny because that's part of what we open with next week, is discussing how do you define happiness? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Most people's methodology in the pursuit of happiness, they lose what they're running after. What I mean is, if I build the big business and I make $1 million, then I'll be happy. So it's conditional
Yeah.
versus what we've been coaching is actually happiness is a state of mind, right?
Yeah.
Said differently, it's a choice. Now we're not talking about people with medical procedures or medical issues and things, that we're talking happiness is a choice that in the face of and I'll use something superficial, a delayed flight coming home.
Yeah.
Well, I can choose to use that time to send handwritten notes to
Mhm.
clients,
Mhm.
or I can loathe in the fact of, "Oh, now I'm going to be home at," it's a choice to show up.
Yeah.
And if you notice the pattern interrupt in that example, for instance, getting on the plane and looking at the flight attendant and say, "Thank you for doing what you're doing. I know you're going to get to your hotel later than you anticipated. Thank you for doing this." It's like, wait, what? You're supposed to be angry. So
Yeah.
I would say superficially, it's a choice and it's a conscious effort to say, what am I choosing to focus on? Deeper than that, globally for your life, it's understanding that you're not going to be happy when
Yeah. Yeah.
you get
Yeah.
the car, you pay
Yeah.
off the debt, you get it's your spirit of how you show up is going to transfer to your home, your car, your whatever.
Yeah, yeah, definitely finding happiness in everything. So that kind of leads to another question I have is, well, what habits or exercises contribute to maintaining happiness and wellness, or well-being in your daily life that maybe you can share that would help other folks that are just kind of diving into the beginning of this journey?
Yeah. Yes, that's a really, really great question. I mean, I think it's defining it, understanding what that is, right? Is are you defining um, happiness as an emotion that you're experiencing? How
Mhm.
often are you choosing to experience that? Is
Mhm.
that, happiness for me is sitting down with three kids every day and asking them, what's the favorite part about your day?
Yeah.
Right. And they call that good things. And so my daughter will say, can we do good things? Right. Like that
Yeah.
brings happiness to me, that I'm very happy in that space. And yet, so that would be something in my daily life, right? Our Sunday family meeting, sitting down. What did everybody like about their week? What do you like? What are you looking forward to next week? What do
Mhm.
you feel like you need to do differently moving into next week to move closer to your goals? Or so that's fun to hear their little minds and their perspective on the world. And
Yeah.
yet, personally, I'd say journaling plays a big role. Working out plays a big role. Reading plays a big role in that.
Yeah.
Um, just being really purposeful on, if this is as good as it gets financially, spiritually, whatever, am I going to choose to be overwhelmed with happiness, or some may say joy, in this place I'm in? Or am I saying, well, I'm good, I'm fine, and yet I'll really be happy, back to the conditional thing. So that's a state of mind, right? It's a
Yeah.
mindset.
No, I definitely agree with you. And it kind of goes along with my next question, but um, kind of like, I mean, I think maybe this is probably a good question we could follow up with. It's just it's how do you see the relationship between happiness and purpose in your life and lives of others?
Ooh, that's a heavy question.
It is.
Because and it's a fantastic question because it is, fulfillment, contentment, happiness, joy, those are so interwoven
Yeah.
that does one have to be, and you've heard me joke about this before, save the whales in order to be happy? No, because now we're back to conditional.
Yeah.
Yet if knowing that, say, giving back to the animal kingdom and rescuing animals was a big part that brought you joy and a
Yeah.
sense of purpose, then naturally, the more you lean into that, the less conscious decisions you have to make about being happy, right? And so I would say that it's knowing that purpose. It's and for the longest time, I mean, well into my early 30s, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up.
Yeah.
And it was, man, all my other friends who were accountants or doctors or astronauts, I was jealous. Like, how did you know you wanted to do that?
Yeah.
Like, right?
Yeah.
Like you
No.
went to school and you're a biologist now. That's so cool. How did you
Yeah.
know you? And I didn't have that. Mine was far more loosey goosey, if you will. And so
Yeah.
I'd say back to the third question or so, having enough thinking time with yourself to defining, well, what is the purpose? What's the direction of my life? Sort of writing your obituary mentally of what do I want people to say about me when I'm gone, and how am I living that today?
Yeah.
Right? Like it's interesting. I ask myself, David, would if you knew that you had 6 months left to live, other than perhaps going on extra trips, just being done with work or extreme things like that, would
Yeah.
I daily be changing the way I show up?
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
the answer is yes, why are you waiting for that news to choose to show up that way?
Yeah, no, and I definitely agree with you. I met this woman years ago with another business that we had, and I always bring her statement up because she's not with us, I'm pretty sure. And I just met her randomly. She worked for the White House. She
Mhm.
gave me one of their annual Christmas ornaments. I still have it. But she meant so much to me because I took her last photo. Ever probably. And her biggest statement was, I was just chatting with her and she said, you have to love the life you're in and love the way you look now because you're going to wish you had loved it 10 years, later. And it
Yep.
kind of goes back to that, like where are you at? Um, just find joy in with what you're doing and start figuring it out because that's kind of where you need to go
Yeah.
with that statement. So she was a wise woman.
That's a ton of wisdom, and some incredibly successful people that I know, billionaires, and multimillionaires that I know, have had homes burned down, had businesses burned down, had horrible tragedies. And in one instance, I remember watching my multimillionaire friend had this beautiful home, 15,000 square foot oceanfront home burned to the ground. And then there's video camera, like people kind of recording, and he's making jokes as he's walking through the rubble, not poking fun, making light of like, well, we're all standing here. Guess what? We're all able to walk. And
Yeah,
I just thought that's an interesting thing because in the face of something as horrific as that, he's finding a silver lining and joy. And I think that there's not every circumstance we can do that. A lot of our day-to-day things, we can do that.
yeah, definitely. So with what we've been just chatting about the last couple of minutes, it kind of leads me to one of my next questions. And I know this is big in your life, and I think everybody else will love to hear a little bit about this. And it's how does philanthropy show up in your life? I mean, because we're kind of moving along, what's been driving you, what's helped you build, all your life based in your how you move. What's best word for it? What keeps you going?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Well, it kind of goes, good question again, is like, I think it goes back to sort of purpose and understanding, like the eulogy comment of, I want to live a life bigger than my day to day, bigger than me, if you will.
yeah,
And so, my wife and I, and you've heard the story, Carrie,
yeah,
I had gone to a dinner, and at the dinner we were exposed to, child sex trafficking, and
mhm,
the area that we used to live where my business was grown originally,
yeah,
number one place in the country for under 14 sex trafficking.
yeah,
And here we had multimillionaire or multi-million dollar real estate business, and I had no clue. I had no clue it was even happening. And I felt very convicted, and not in a guilt way, in a like, what the heck are you doing? Right. And so we took charge, got involved, partnered with a couple of organizations, grew a couple of organizations, and now are, we've since merged and sold and all of that, but we're merged with third largest child sex trafficking rescue organization in the state of California. So when I look at the life's purpose and you look at another girl saved, and then by the way, the organization partners with them through scholarship, older in life for college and or vocational training. So it's the whole gamut of, yes, rescuing them and yet turning their life around to be able to move past this horrible thing. And
Yeah.
so to think about, the now 176 girls that we've rescued,
Wow.
those are 176 girls that are going to go and change the world in their own way.
Yeah.
And that's incredible to think about. And
Yeah.
I'm very proud of that. And
Yeah.
yeah, so that is one of those. It has nothing to do with my business. It has nothing to do with, and yet it's the way to give back um, around something that has now become near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, yeah. And that is just so amazing that you've helped so many folks and you're involved in this because it's just such a crisis. So I appreciate that so much that you're so involved in and helping in that. With other folks, how do you feel like the best way for them to find if maybe they want to start getting involved in some kind of philanthropy? How do they start figuring out what means something to them? I mean,
I'd say that's a great question because I think it kind of goes back to the purpose question. I think getting good at anything, any skill, anything that one could say that they've mastered or they're really good at has
yeah,
taken time. It's taken research. It's taken reading books, connecting with people, right? Like people don't roll out of bed as the world's best tennis player.
yeah,
And so we often don't think of soft skills that way.
yeah,
Purpose. It's time. It's reading about it, researching it, understanding it, what gets you excited, looking at your behavior patterns,
yeah,
and really looking at what matches, as I've been watching what's happening in your neck of the woods in Western North Carolina. And I know that I've got like a trigger for kids. I hear, the guy who broke his arm, and I'm like, you'll be all right. Be a great barbecue story in a couple of weeks, right? I hear about the kiddo, and it's like, oof, it hits different. Understanding that about myself leads into my philanthropic work.
yeah, yeah. And I really feel like traveling. I mean, if I mean that'll teach you what drives you too, because
That's
the world you learn about so many different things around the world. The more you travel and the more you read, and I think it, I think it can definitely help you figure out what pulls
yep,
your heart, what pulls your motivation, and I think that can definitely drive you to figure out what has
yeah.
meaning to you.
For sure. And it's a massive perspective shift, right? Like I wake up every day and I reach for my light switch. I wake up every day and I turn my faucet on to brush my teeth. And then you go somewhere else and that's a luxury. And
Yeah,
that perspective shift of like, geez, what I take for granted is a luxury in some parts of the world. So
yeah.
that's great.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is, and it's funny that you just mentioned that because I think about all the folks in Western North Carolina, and it's just crazy. But then I had a conversation, I believe Monday, with our VA, and she's in the Philippines, and we
Mhm.
were just chatting, and I said, we were talking about the storms, and she had mentioned that, and she said that she said she was sitting in 3 feet of water in her house or something like that. And I was like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, this is just normal. We'll just have to let it go down." And I was like, "Wow, that's so interesting." It was just really interesting. She said it's normal from June. Did she say June to January? So it's just
7 months
perspective.
of their life, they're sitting in 3 feet of water where
Yeah,
that would shut everyone. I mean, our whole family would be shut. We'd like, oh, let's go somewhere else. Let's get a hotel. Let's right. And for her, that's just the way she operates. And that's such
yeah,
an interesting perspective because you think about the grit, the determination, the mindset that one would have to have living in 3 feet of water. It's insane.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We had asked her a few days later. We're like, "Okay, are you is it gone? Are you, yeah, and she said, yeah, we're cleaning it up. So it's subsided, but that is just a day-to-day event. So it's just so interesting. So I think learning, I mean, you don't, I mean, I'm not traveling to chat with her. I mean, I'm just chatting with her on Zoom, just every day. And it's just surprising, and it definitely teaches you about the world and
Yeah.
how grateful we should be here.
How grateful we should be. Amen to
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, so I have one more question to
Yeah.
ask. How do you recommend somebody that someone, balances life, work, and figuring out their personal goals, and just in general, just a general question. Where would you tell somebody to start with this whole process of figuring out what best life they want to live in just a nutshell? Just to get,
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, similarly to like what we've said, is make it a priority I mean, think about any other topic or subject, or you would go on TikTok, or you'd go on Facebook, or you'd go online, or you'd start Googling, or you'd start asking a friend, right? Whatever the thing was, right?
yeah,
Like your kiddo decide, is dyslexic, let's just say. You
yeah,
all of a sudden become a dyslexic expert, right? Because you're researching, you're consuming all the information
yeah,
over a period of time. And what I would say is now point to the day that person became an expert. You probably couldn't. It's
yeah,
an overtime thing. And so I guess I would say, is this part of a pursuit for you, or are you looking for the quick fix to I want to put my finger on it? Because by the way, I'm still asking myself what I want to do when I grow up.
yeah,
And so I think it's an evergreen process. It never, and so spending time on it, researching it, asking the question, how does one do that? There's a great principle called an Ikigai principle, Ikigai,
mhm,
Ikigai, and it looks at what you're great at, what the world needs, right? And it looks at how all these things intersect to find the Japanese term of Ikigai, or
yeah,
a balanced or purposeful life. So
mhm,
I'd say just being a student of it. I know now the things that I'll say yes to and the things that I'll say no to in a heartbeat because of that concept.
yeah,
And so it's almost, I guess, in short, it's like saying being a student
yeah,
of
yeah.
purpose and of yourself.
Yeah, yeah. No, I can definitely see that. And I think it's something that you typically can't figure out overnight. Definitely takes some time.
Which
And
then adds frustration, which then adds an emotional disconnecting. Oh, I just don't know.
yeah,
Right. I tried doing this thing 3 years ago and I did right, as if it's something to fix, as if it's a task to be checked off. And it's like the box is never going to be checked. It's
no,
a constant lifelong discovery.
yeah. And it keeps changing and evolving. And I think eventually you'll find, like for you, you found a purpose beyond just your family, and but you found a purpose. And I think just exploring these topics and ideas will lead you down a path to maybe finding it. You may
Yeah.
never, but
Yeah.
through the process, you'll be able to help a lot of people, maybe.
That's it. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Which is, since I've been 8 years old, 7 years old, like, as long as I can remember, I just want to help people. Is I remember saying that, right?
Yeah.
So to your point, perhaps it's not a task that'll be checked, yet I'm living in the purpose if I'm serving others.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, I know you're a busy guy, and I don't want to take any more of your time because I know you're super busy. But I wanted to appreciate, we appreciate it so much that you came on here to chat with us. We love chatting with you every week and having you in our life. So again, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us. And if you would like to contact David, we'll have his information below in the comments. And again, thank you so much again for coming on.
Well, thank you, Carrie. Tell Chad I said hi. It's truly a pleasure, and the
Yeah.
feeling's mutual.
Yeah, thank you, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you. I will. Bye, Carrie.
Bye.